My name is Kristen Crumbly. I am one of the graduate assistants in the Student Academic Resource Center. Who here has ever visited SARC before? Anybody? So do we know where SARC is? Hint, it's on here. So we're in Howard Phillips Hall, which is that building directly at the end of the breezeway. And we're located on the first floor and basement level. That's where we have our tutoring center as well as our SI office. We'll talk about a couple of the resources that we have in that office for you all. But we're a service for students. And today you all are here for No Stress Zone, Reducing Test-Taking Anxiety. So I'm happy that you came, and hopefully you'll have learned something when you leave here today. Next, please. All right, so this is just a kind of an overview of our services. If y'all also click next, this basically encompasses all of the services that we offer in SARC. So the first is what you're at right now, so our academic success workshops. Basically, you'll come to a workshop just like this one, and there'll be different subjects like test-taking anxiety. There's also avoiding procrastination, final examination preparation, or like notebook or note-taking skills or textbook reading skills and things of that nature, time management, etc. So we offer a lot of those throughout the semester for everyone, and those are located on our website. And there you'll find where we're having them and what time they'll be at and what the subject will be. Down here you'll see we have learning skills consultations in our office as well. Learning skills consultations are another free service we offer in our office, and basically it's kind of like our academic success workshops but more personalized. So our academic success workshops are open to all of you. So are learning skills consultations, but they happen one-on-one. So in those appointments, they're the only thing in SARC that you'll have to actually make an appointment for and schedule. But you'll schedule a learning skills consultation with a learning skills specialist like myself or the other graduate assistants. And you'll sit down with us for a one-on-one consultation for about an hour, and we'll go over your own specific learning needs. So if you're specifically having an issue with time management or test taking or anything, or if you go to a workshop and you find you may need a little more specific assistance, you're more than welcome to make an appointment like that with us in our office. We also offer online academic support, such as online peer-assisted learning, which is like our supplemental instructions sessions, but online format. And then supplemental instruction is, we have supplemental instruction and tutoring, which is that top orange circle up there that we can't see at the moment. But so tutoring happens in the SARC lab, which is located in Howard Phillips Hall, room 115. There you can visit a tutor for any subject that's on the schedule. Generally speaking, for SI and for tutoring, we offer those services for more of the historically difficult courses, the math, engineering classes, statistics, science courses, things of that nature. But tutoring happens in that office with that tutor. And supplemental instruction is a tad bit different from tutoring. The SI leaders will actually sit in on your lecture section with you, and they will have already taken the course, much like the tutors, but they'll sit in on the class with you the entire semester that you take it and facilitate 4 study sessions per week that you can attend. So just a little different, but all helpful. So hopefully y'all will take advantage of those in the near future. And we can run to the next slide. Next slide, please. All right. So what we're going to go over today is, well, everybody came here to talk about testing anxiety, right? So we're going to find out, what is academic anxiety? Like, what does that look like for everyone? Also, what are some causes of testing anxiety? Like, where does that come from? Why is this something that we experience, right? Also, hopefully you came here today to figure out what you need to do to get rid of that or reduce that a little bit so that you can be successful in your coursework, right? We'll go on to the next slide. Okay, so a lot of times when we take our exams, this is what we look like, right? It can feel just like that. And it's like, I can't keep calm, or, people will say keep calm, and you're like, how? Like, what does that even look like? I don't get what you mean. Like, how can you just be okay with this experience? This is ridiculous. This is crazy. I don't understand how I'm going to get through this, right? Next slide, please. I kind of want to hear from you all in the audience. So what is that experience look like for you? What is testing anxiety look like for you? What does it look like?
Well, most of the time, I think that I understand the course material. Like I participate in class, all that stuff. It's just that testing particular. I just get really nervous, and I don't know, like tests aren't a good reflection of how I actually am in the class.
Yeah, okay, I get that. So it's kind of like you study and you get it, but the test itself, like that moment, it's like, where did that go?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Any other experiences? Yeah. Okay. Well, so in reality, this is something that's really common. You know, there's quite a few people in this room, and there are probably quite a few people on this campus as well that deal with this. So it's not, you know, just a singular phenomenon. It's not just something you experience. It's very common. So just want to normalize that for everyone. It is completely normal. Testing is it's stressful. You know, it's something that people use to measure how you'll do in a course, you know, and this is your future, this is your success that we're talking about, right? And it shows that that's really important to you. So it's not something to be ashamed of, you know, like everyone has anxieties here and there. Testing is difficult, you know, college classes are hard. So there's no shame in that, you know, we all experience that from time to time. And also the fact that this anxiety doesn't have to stay with you. It's something that can decrease with practice and with proper coping skills. So with putting the right things in place, you know, you all already took one step by coming to this workshop. You know, this is something that may help you in the future. So, y'all got this, right? So just an overview of like stress in general. You know, we all experience different types of stress. So anxiety can be a helpful tool sometimes, you know. If you've ever heard the difference between eustress and distress, there's good stress and bad stress. So without even just a little bit of anxiety, we may not have any motivation to like get up and do anything, right? You know, the first thing we think in the morning is like, I need to get up or I need to go do this thing because of blank. And there's little anxiety that may be pushing you to do that because there may be a consequence to not getting that thing done, right? So a little bit of stress is good. Because it motivates you, you know, like feeling motivated to study because you want to pass your classes. You know, that's good stress. But when that stress starts to compound on itself and get so overwhelming that you can't function, you know, that's when it becomes an issue. You know, that's when it becomes bad stress. And it's important to find balance there. So like this graph here shows like that balance, like the good stress is right in the middle. And there's like a fine line between, you know, being too calm about something because maybe if you don't have enough anxiety about a test and you're not worried about it at all, maybe that just shows that you don't care enough about it, or there may not be enough effort there to get that test passed. But if you go too far with the stress, then you still may not be able to perform well. So it's all about keeping that in the middle, keeping that balance. Any questions? Okay. Next slide, please. Alrighty. So I heard some input in that it can be really difficult. You know, you'll know the material at first, and then you'll get to the test, and it's like blank. You know, that is a symptom of anxiety. Some other symptoms of severe test anxiety include increased heart rate. Has anybody here ever experienced that? Yeah. Cold or sweaty palms, like when you feel like a chill or like your hands are just super cold to the touch, not just because it's cold. Like I know the union's very cold, but you know, sometimes, you know, your hands are cold and they're sweating. Breathing really fast, trying to get in that air to calm yourself down, even panic attacks, which can be extremely severe. Feeling sick, you know, when you're about to take an exam and you're like, oh, I can't do this, I need to run to the bathroom, or even getting headaches. You know, headaches, stress causes headaches, stress causes tension. Tension just like builds in your neck or your back or wherever in your body, and it's just really hard to focus. Some of these physical symptoms can cause you not to be able to concentrate. You know, like when you have a really bad headache, kind of like when you're hungry, like how can you focus, right? If you are having a panic attack, like how can you sit still, hold a pen and paper, and like fill out an exam, you know? So these things can be debilitating, which is why it's important to take this step and come and you know, like acknowledge the fact that this is something you're dealing with so you can get some assistance with it, because we want you all to be successful. A lot of times these things contribute to not being able to understand what you're reading on your exam. So who here has ever had the experience where they've read like the same sentence like 10 times and they didn't understand what it said, right? Sometimes that can be, you know, boredom. Sometimes it can be anxiety. Sometimes you just can't focus on the words that are on that paper because you're so nervous. And you read it and you're like, okay, I have to read this. I have to know what this says, but I can't because I can't focus. Like, what do these words mean together, you know? Being unable to organize your thoughts in order to answer those questions. So even if you are able to read it, that's kind of like your mind going blank, you know? It's kind of like, where did it go? You know, I just had the thought and it's gone. And also the inability to remember subjects even though you've studied them. And you may have studied them very thoroughly, or you believe that you studied them very thoroughly, but it's just like in that moment of intense pressure, it's like fight or flight. Who here has heard of like fight, flight, or freeze? Yeah? So in that moment, when your body is experiencing this, you know, that physiological, you know, I feel like I'm in danger because something bad is going to happen. And that bad thing is I'm not going to do well on this test. So your body is so focused on like, I got to, you know, get to safety, you know, like either I'm going to fight, I'm going to like fly, or I'm going to freeze up. And oftentimes freezing ends up being what happens. So it's just like is there anything on this list that, or anything that isn't on this list that someone may have experienced or knows of someone who may have experienced when they were dealing with some testing anxiety?
My hands began to shake.
Your handshake? Yeah, that one's really common, especially like when you can tell when you're holding like a pen or pencil to write. Yeah, definitely. And that can be a cause of some tension too. You're like, I can't even write on my paper. Okay. Any other ones?
I can't sleep.
No sleep. And then when you can't sleep, like how can you focus on your test if you couldn't get any sleep the night before, right? Now that's a good one. You know, that's something that I think is I see pretty commonly in college students. So hopefully we can remedy that at least a little bit. Next slide, please. Alrighty, so who knows who this, well, I mean, never mind, because his name is right here. This is Arthur Ashe, and this is something that he said, and it's one of his like more famous quotes, but one important key to success is self-confidence. An important key to self-confidence is preparation. So what do y'all think that means?
If you practice more, you can be successful, and you can avoid your stress.
Yeah, I like that.
If you prepare more, you start feeling confident about it.
Mhm.
The more confident you are, the better you perform.
Yes. So both, I like both of those answers. So what I got from what you said was, you know, the more you prepare, the more confident you feel. That's exactly right. So what we're going to talk about today, you know, one of the best tools you can have in your toolbox for exams or for anything in life or anything you need to prepare for is to get prepared. You know, if there's a big test coming up, a big presentation, you know, or a job interview even, anything like that, you know, preparing for it is what can give your body that calm and that peace in knowing, you know, I got this, you know? So who here has ever crammed before? Let's just be honest. Yeah? It happens. It happens. So how do you feel when you cram? Like when you go to that test? Like what do you feel like?
I'm going to screw this up.
Okay, yeah. Like the first thought in your mind is like, there's no way I can win here because I don't feel prepared. Yeah.
And in the rare occasion that you do well on the test, everything that you crammed leaves right after you take it.
I like that one too. That's a good answer. So even if you did cram in all that information, you didn't give yourself time to digest it and really understand it. So even if you're prepared for that moment, what about another class that you may have needed to use that information for later, right? So being able to be confident in your abilities to pass these exams all lies in that preparation. Preparation is key. Right? Next slide, please. So one of the most common causes, studies have shown that one of the most common causes of testing anxiety in college students is a lack of preparation. So there's a direct correlation between knowing the material and understanding material. So when you get an understanding of what's going on in your classes, in lectures, in your notes, etc., that's when you know it and you can recite it to someone or teach it to someone or jot it down on a test with ease. And as knowledge and understanding increases, testing anxiety will decrease. You know, when you're able to have that confidence of knowing, I know this information, so there's no need for me to worry. Right? What do y'all think about that? I see some head nods. We agree. Okay. Next slide, please. All right, so I like to kind of open this up, open the floor up. So I'm asking, how can you make sure you're prepared? I mean, if y'all had the answer to this question, you might not be in this workshop. So what have y'all been doing to prepare up until this point? Okay, you've been taking notes and highlighting the main points in the text. Okay, you've been quizzing yourself. I like that. Okay. What are some other things y'all been doing to prepare for your exams? Yeah.
Make sure that you get a good night's rest like the day before the exam.
Okay, yeah, making sure you get a good night's rest the day before. I like that idea.
Like in my lecture classes, I like to download my professor's PowerPoint beforehand, and then when they're going over it, I have what they say, and then I write in my own notes for like clarifications for things that I didn't understand directly.
Okay, so you write down their notes and you also write it in your own words for you to understand it better. Okay, that's a good idea. These all sound like really good study strategies. Yeah. So I wonder, when you all have an exam coming up, when is the earliest point that you'll start studying for it? Like how long do you give yourself to study for a test?
1 week.
A week? Okay. Any other answers?
For just exam?
Yeah.
1 whole day.
A whole day? Okay. So let's say like for these exams, do they tend to cover multiple chapters? Maybe like over the span of a few weeks of material? Okay. So we're studying like we'll like all that material we're learning in that, maybe a month and a half, a few weeks. We're kind of like giving ourselves a week to review it or a day to review all that. Is that what we're saying? Okay. Ready? Next slide, please. So a way that we can ensure understanding, which some of these examples you all gave. So being organized and prepared for class. I heard we'll take notes on the PowerPoint slides that the professor gives. Managing time wisely is key in situations like this because when it comes to being prepared for your exams, maybe studying a week before for material that took you 4 weeks to learn and gather may not necessarily be the most helpful thing, because in that same week that you're studying for that exam, you have other classes you're taking in information for too, right? There's a lot going on in students' lives. So making sure time is being managed wisely, that may mean starting to study earlier for an exam when you know it's coming up, like on the syllabus. If you know that the first test is going to be after 6 weeks in class, then maybe you start on week 2. Like I just learned a week's worth of information. Let me review that so that when this test comes, I'm prepared, I'm ready. Also, when it comes to setting up and following a study schedule, I know we talked about cramming and how we all have done it. It happens. It's important to note that cramming is not helpful. Like I've heard someone already mention how you may gather all the information when you cram it in. It's there, but maybe for like a day, half a day, or until you get to that test. And once you walk outside from that exam and breathe that sigh of relief that you finished it, it's gone. Like you breathe, you exhale, and the information comes out with it, right? So cramming essentially isn't as helpful to you as it may be in that moment, right? So setting up and following a study schedule can help you plan out in advance, what am I going to study when? So that when the time comes, I'm ready. So I'm not scrambling at the end or like a few days before the test or even just 1 week before the test trying to gather all the information that I've already been taking in. So it's more about being efficient with that gathering of information that we're getting in lectures, when we review our notes or anything like that. Also self-testing, which I heard this, so asking yourself questions, quizzing yourself, and learning your weaknesses so that you can focus on those. So it's important to know where your weak points are. So for example, you may be going through a whole chapter or a whole 3 chapters of material for an exam. Maybe one chapter was more difficult for you to comprehend than the other 2. So knowing that chapter may be a weaker point for you, knowing what you need to spend more time on is important as well. Being informed about how the tests are set up. So knowing in advance when all your test dates are, so you know when to expect them. That's important because you can only be prepared for what you know is coming. So being prepared for those exams, knowing what those dates are, having those written down, and you're ready for them when they get there. Also, talk to your professors. Those few minutes before class starts, or even those few minutes after class after class ends. Have a chat with your professor, get their ideas on, how they structure their exams. Your professors write these tests. So they're the only ones that can inform you how to best take their exams, and these professors are here to help you. They want you to learn. So you showing them that you want to do as well as you can, you want to learn from their classes, you want to learn from their exams. They're the only ones that can tell you what to expect, right? And then on top of that, I heard someone back here talking about getting a good night's rest. So overall health is important. So like we talked about earlier when it came to like headaches, like symptoms of testing anxiety. If you're hungry during an exam, how are you going to focus on that exam? You're going to be thinking about getting out here to Hugh Magoo's or someplace to find some food as soon as you leave. If you haven't slept, if you haven't gotten sleep, it'll be hard to stay awake sometimes to even have good enough attention with what's going on. Exercise can help as well. So just taking care of your body or your overall health is important just to keep everything on the inside working well so that you can project good things on your exam. Any questions or comments about that? Are any of these things that you all do so far? Some of them? So what would you all like to try that you haven't tried already? Anyone?
Study schedule.
The study schedule? Okay. That one can be a little tricky. It's hard sometimes to plan out studying. I found, I've done quite a few learning skills consultations with students, and I found that students have responded very well to not just setting up a study schedule and just saying, on Tuesdays between this class and this class, I'm going to study for 2 hours. That's great, but are you really going to sit there for 2 hours and study? Are you going to be on Netflix for a little bit? Are you going to be on your phone for a little? Are you going to go grab a snack? It's important to break up that time and be specific and intentional about what you're going to do. So instead of saying, from this hour to this hour I'm going to study, maybe you can say, for this 30 minutes, I'm going to focus on these flashcards for this class, for this test. And then I'm going to take maybe like a 10-minute break. I'm going to grab a snack. I'm going to do something to re-energize myself. And then I'll come back and maybe for another 45 minutes, I'm going to take notes on this chapter for this lecture coming up in whatever class. So being very specific and intentional about that study time can be very helpful when setting up a study schedule. So, any other ones that anyone would like to try that they haven't already? No, y'all are so quiet. Talk to me. Alrighty. Next slide, please. Alrighty, so this is a quick video that I'd like you all to view. It has to do with something called the 5 types of studying. So if y'all have anything to take notes with, you're more than welcome if you want to take some quick notes on your phone. I also have some handouts to give you all after this goes off. But this will give you an overview, and then we'll discuss them afterwards. Okay? And Camilla, whenever you're ready.
Study skills and test preparation. Do you find yourself spending countless hours studying, but not getting the results you would like? Perhaps you are not using the most efficient study strategies to prepare for exams. In this video, we will cover 5 types of study strategies for effective test preparation and better mastery of course content. You will want to start this process as soon as possible, as studying is a large investment, and you do not want to cram. First, let's look at your study environment. Do you currently study on your bed, on the floor, at the kitchen table? How about the library? If you are on your bed, your brain does not know if you're there to study or to sleep. This makes it easier to get distracted or doze off. If you're at the kitchen table, instead of focusing on studying, you may be tempted to get something to eat. better options would be to study in the library or at a desk, since you will know exactly what you are there to do and will be able to dive right into your work. It is always important to study in a place that is conducive to studying. Now, let's talk about the 5 types of studying. Studying to gather information, studying to learn information, studying to check for learning, studying to refresh, and studying to improve learning skills. When studying to gather information, you must organize everything needed in order to learn. Compile any study guides professors have given you, as well as your textbook, lecture, and chapter notes. First, make sure that you are reading your textbook thoroughly. One way to do this is by using the SQ3R method, which stands for survey, question, read, recite, and review. To survey your textbook, make note of the print, italics, charts, graphics, chapter summaries, and end-of-chapter questions. This shouldn't take more than a few minutes, as you are only identifying each chapter's core ideas. Next, develop questions from the main ideas you discovered during your survey. Now you can read and actively seek the information that will answer your questions instead of plodding through each line of text. Reading this way helps to prevent the blank mind syndrome, which is the inability to remember what you just read. Next, recite the answers you have found aloud from memory.
What are the 2 laws of inheritance? 2 laws of inheritance: law of segregation and law of independent assortment.
When you finish a chapter, try to answer your questions without looking at your notes or the text. You can then use the answers in your notes or text to check and see how much you have learned.
Yeah. Organism with a pair of identical alleles.
Lastly, you should review these notes every 2 to 3 days. Now that you have adequate textbook notes, make sure to attend class and take notes on the lecture to fill in the gaps. To ensure the accuracy of your notes, you can compare them with those of a trusted classmate. You can also confirm your notes with your professor. Some suggested forms of note-taking include the Cornell format, note cards, and outlines. These formats facilitate reviewing and learning. When studying to learn the information you have gathered, frequent repetition becomes an important part of retention, but you must also learn to understand the meaning of the information, not just memorize. Individual studying and study groups are both equally beneficial, and getting creative with tough concepts is also encouraged. Time management is essential throughout this process. Make sure to define your priorities and create a timeline for yourself. You can refer to our time management video for more information. It is very important that you study to check for learning. The best strategy to create deep and durable learning is self-testing. Retrieving information on a regular basis helps you build strong connections in the brain and solidify concepts in your long-term memory. The harder and longer it takes you to recall, the stronger your retention will be. Quiz yourself without the help of notes or books. Take out a blank sheet of paper or use a whiteboard to write down everything you know about the subject which you are studying. You and a fellow student can also create practice tests and question each other in the format you expect on the exam. Repeat this process 2 to 3 times weekly if necessary to make sure you thoroughly master the subject. You can now study to refresh your knowledge, so you do not forget the material you have learned. Rehearse the concepts you haven't reviewed in a while to make sure they stay in your long-term memory. To ensure maximum retention, you should do this without the aid of your notes. The first 4 types of studying are designed to prepare you for what is important prior to taking your exam. Studying to improve learning, on the other hand, is what occurs after you have taken your test or quiz. Use your test results as feedback to help you modify or replace study skills in preparation for your next test or quiz. If you did not do as well as you had hoped, be sure to analyze your current study strategies and behaviors. Be honest with yourself and think about what type of studying you could have spent more time on.
I thought it was A, but I guess it was D.
Talk to other students who did well on their exam and see what they did differently. This may help you discover different strategies that will work better for you in the future. You may also want to consider utilizing campus resources, such as SARC, tutoring, and supplemental instruction. By focusing on each of these steps from the beginning of the semester, and by managing your time and tasks wisely, you will never again have to cram before your exams. If you need additional support with study skills and test preparation, please come to the Student Academic Resource Center and let us be a part of your success at UCF. Visit our website to explore free handouts, self-help tools, and to review our most current academic support programming schedules.
All right. So on your handouts, I have here included some 10 test preparation hints for you all. And hint number 9 is the 5 types of studying. So when it comes to using the 5 types of studying, the key to using them is time, really. So giving yourself time to get all of that accomplished. So time to gather the information, time to study to learn the information, time to study and check for learning. So that comes with the the self-testing, and then studying to refresh that. So if you start, on the first day that you start gathering this material for your exam, which would be like the first day of class, the first time you start learning new information, that's when the studying should begin. And if you're studying a little bit every day to gather the information, solidify it in your long-term memory, and go over it and review it so you don't forget it, then by the time your test comes around, you'll have been prepared with all of the material you've been learning so far. So the key is to give yourself time to do that, to be properly prepared. Some other hints some other test preparation hints on here are reciting notes out loud from memory, which is something that we heard in the video with the SQ3R method. Reviewing your notes on a regular basis is something that can help keep the information fresh in your mind. So who here reviews their notes after they take them in lecture? Okay, how long after do you usually do that? Before the test. Okay, so you may not even see those notes again until right when you start studying for your exam, right? So it's very likely that once you hear it in lecture, because a lot of you take multiple classes in a day, you may go from one lecture to the next, so you have to switch gears really quickly. So if you don't go home that night or maybe even the next day and review that material, you may not even see it again until you're studying for that test. So that is something else that can also contribute to how prepared you feel and that anxiety you may feel if you don't feel prepared on the day of. So something else on here is rewriting notes after each lecture. That's just yet another way to solidify that information in your long-term memory. So if you read over your notes again, if you recite them out loud, if you write them down, that's 3 different ways that you've reviewed those notes. Self-testing using a study system that includes a step to reveal how much has been learned and has not yet been learned before you take your test. So this would basically be like, for example, flashcards. If you are looking at some flashcards that you've made to review your material and you have a pile for the cards that you got right, what you do know, and maybe a pile for what you don't know quite yet because you didn't get those right. So that's a way to measure, what do I know and what don't I know, so I can review exactly what I don't know. And there are a lot of other examples on here as well. So these are for you all to keep, to use when you're preparing for your next exams, and I hope that's something that's helpful for you all. You could go to the next slide for me, please. Something else that can help with reducing anxiety in general, finding a mantra. So a mantra, something such as this one. This quote says, "Believe in yourself and all that you are. Know that there is something inside you that is greater than any obstacle." When you hear or read that, how does that make you feel? What's that like, hearing that?
Positive.
You feel positive? It feels good, right? Yeah, there is something inside of me that's greater. You know, like I feel good. That was something that made me feel really nice to hear, like all warm and fuzzy maybe. Or maybe not warm and fuzzy, maybe just good. But finding something that you can say to yourself in the morning or say to yourself before a test that makes you feel good, you know, that makes you feel confident. A positive affirmation, you know, use them at any time. You don't have to just use them before exams. You can use them while you're studying because a lot of times, like as college students, you know, if you all weren't good at what you did, you wouldn't be here. You made it to college and you're doing great. So just believing that, you know, like don't beat up on yourself when you're studying, you know, have maybe hide some post-it notes in your textbook of like positive sayings. So as you're getting through it and going through your book or going through your notes, as you may start to get frustrated, which sometimes that happens, you run across this positive affirmation. You're like, you know what? I wrote that. I remember when I felt like that. I should feel like that again. You know? You can use them in class to calm yourself down, you know, something that brings you peace, something that brings you happiness. Are there any like particular quotes that may strike a chord with any of you all, like anything that you can think of that may make you feel better, you know, that make you feel good when you see it or hear it? Any quotes? Well, I gave you.
Deserve what you desire.
What did you say?
You deserve what you desire.
Okay.
That's what I say to myself.
I like that. You deserve what you desire. And in that moment, you know, you desire this A on this test. You deserve that. Yeah, I like that. That's a good one. Anybody else have another example? That was a good one. So using that, and when you have the chance, writing that down somewhere, stick it on your mirror in your bathroom. You know, you wake up and you brush your teeth and you see that. That's something that will have you prepped and ready for your day. You know, to study and to tackle everything that you got to get through to get what you desire. Right? Post motivational pictures for yourself. You know, like this quote here, you know, having this as the background on your phone or like printing it out and sticking it in your binder so you can see it, putting it inside your textbook or notebook or your computer screensaver, on the dashboard of your car, like somewhere where you will see it so that you can't forget it. You know, it's something that you will see every day and eventually it's kind of like studying. It'll be in there. It'll be ingrained. After a while, even if it's a quote that you may not have memorized, you'll know it because you see it every day. Okay? Next slide, please. Alrighty, so some tips for reducing anxiety on the day of your exam. So a lot of these things do have a lot to do with being prepared. So in order to arrive early to your exam, you need to, you know, have gotten up on time, you know, a lot of time for like traffic and parking, you know, getting settled with your Scantron, your pencils, your blue book, whatever materials that you need. Because, you know, there's nothing worse than showing up on test day and not having a writing utensil. You know, like what will make you more stressed? It's like, what else do I need to happen right now besides the fact that like I don't feel prepared? So getting settled, making sure that you have nothing else that you could have to worry about at that point in time. So you have everything you need, you're there early. Don't think about the material, try to relax. And notice I said try to relax and I didn't say just relax because if anything that doesn't make anxiety better is when someone just says just relax, it's fine. You know, because like that doesn't make your anxiety any better, does it? So, you know, try as best as you can to just, you know, sit down, take a few deep breaths, think about something else, distract yourself a little bit. Also, looking over when you get the exam, looking over the entire thing, allotting yourself some time, or allotting yourself a certain amount of time per question. So, a lot of times we may feel more prepared to get through something if we know what to expect. So when you first get that exam, looking through all the questions, see what's ahead of you so that you don't just like get all the way through 10 questions and on question number 11 you're stumped, you know? And you start to freak out because you're like, oh wait, I was doing so well so far. Are they all going to be this hard? So if you take a minute to just look through all of the questions, you'll know what's coming at you. You'll know which ones it may be wiser to approach first. You know, like which ones do I know and I can do them right this minute to make sure I get those right. You know, so looking over your entire exam, allowing yourself a certain amount of time per question. So say, for instance, you have 30 minutes to do this quiz, and there are 15 questions. That means 2 minutes a question, ideally, if you want to spend the same amount of time on each question and make it and be finished on time. Also, visualizing yourself in a more relaxed atmosphere, you know, like that visualization can be very helpful. You know, visualize yourself, you know, sitting on a beach if you like beaches. You know, some people don't like sand, so that may not be relaxing for everybody. But visualize yourself at home, you know, relaxing, someplace that you feel comfortable, you feel safe. Deep breathing or progressive muscle relaxation Has anyone here ever heard of progressive muscle relaxation before? So yes. So we do have someone that's familiar. What it is it's in tandem with deep breathing, but it's kind of something you can do. You can even do it sitting in your chair, but just taking a minute to, like, as you're breathing in and out deeply, like progressively, like tensing and relaxing different areas of your body. So like maybe starting with your hands, and you're breathing in and out, and you squeeze your hands tight, really, really tight for maybe like 10 seconds. And as you're breathing, let it go, and then they just relax. Then you do it with your arms, then you do it with your back, you do it with your legs, your feet, your toes, your neck. And then you just feel this all over relaxation. It's something that kind of helps your body relax, which helps you relax. Thinking positively, remembering your mantra. So this is kind of that positive affirmation, because if we tell ourselves, I'm going to bomb this test, it's likely that you will follow what your mind is telling you. So remaining positive is something that can be very helpful. Remembering that mantra, staying in that positive mindset so your mind can be clear and ready for the task ahead. You can move on to the next slide, please. Ready? So some other tips. Always go with your first instinct, like your gut instinct. You don't second guess yourself, because if you're prepared, which is something that would help lower that anxiety, when you feel prepared, there's no need to second guess. Like you've sat in lecture, you listened to this material, you looked at it, you've read it, you have the textbook, you've done these things to study. Go with what you know, okay? Also, answering questions worth the most amount of points first. That can be a very helpful strategy. Starting with those first as you have that confidence built up, so that once because some tests, they're really long and you can get tired like during the exam, like in general. So answering the questions worth the most amount of points first, so you can ensure you get those points. Skipping the hard ones and come back to them at the end. So kind of like what we talked about in the previous slide. Allotting a certain amount of time per each question. If you get to a question, like you get through 1 through 10 and you get to 11 and you're stumped, there may be like 15, 20 more questions, and you're on 11 and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with this one, and you're stuck on it, and you spend like 10 minutes, and then you only have 20 minutes left to finish the rest of your test. So skip the hard ones, come back to them at the end. Do what you know first. Stay focused. If you find yourself starting to get nervous, or you start shaking, or your palms start getting cold and sweaty, or you start to get that rapid heartbeat or anything, or you just start to feel out of sorts, take a minute and take a deep breath to relax. Remember to ground yourself. Remember all that you've done to prepare. And then taking your time. It's not a race. Of course, you'll allot yourself that certain number of time per question, but this is your test. You don't need to finish before anybody else. You don't need to be the first one out the door. This is your exam, and this is the time that you've been given to show what you know. Okay? And the first one done doesn't necessarily mean they get the best grade, and we all know that. Sometimes people just want to be done with it because the experience can be not the greatest. So just take your time. There's no need to rush. And keep calm. It's just a test. Speaking of which, in a lot of classes, there's more than one exam. And tests are also a learning experience. There will be a number of tests throughout your college career. This won't be the only one you take. And a lot of times in classes, it's also not the only thing that determines your grade as well. So being mindful of that as well. Next slide, please. So last but not least, some resources on campus, because like we talked about earlier in the slides, some of these symptoms that you may experience when you're feeling really anxious about these tests may be really severe. They may interfere with, what you do daily. They may interfere with your daily activities. You may not feel able to carry out certain things. If you ever feel like it's interfering with you in any way, or even if it's not that severe, you just want to talk to someone, CAPS is a resource for everyone on campus, every student. This is their phone number. CAPS stands for Counseling and Psychological Services, and it's a great resource for students to use because, well, one, it's free, and two, who doesn't want to talk to someone if they're experiencing a hard time, right? So don't be afraid to seek that professional help if you feel it's higher than normal, like that anxiety, if you feel it's interfering with your living or anything like that. If you're having frequent panic attacks, anxiety that just never goes away and it's always here, If you feel like if you always feel like you're in danger, or that fight, flight, or freeze response is just always present, there is that community center on campus that you can go for counseling, and it's confidential, it's free, and it's just something that we want to make sure that is available to you all if you need that assistance so that you can be helped and so that you can be successful. We care about that. Student Academic Resource Center, we care about your success. So I want to make sure you're aware of that. Any questions? Right, so I'd like to hear from everybody. What's one thing new you learned today? Yeah.
Definitely to time out what you're doing and get fully prepared.
Yeah, timing is important. It's key.
Just stay positive before the test.
Staying positive, that is important. Yeah, staying positive. Anybody else?
Prepare your test, which is not just in library and not at the bed.
Okay, yeah, finding a good place to study, like an environment that's conducive to your studying. Like the library, not your bed, not the floor, not the kitchen, no distractions. Ready? Yeah. Using all your resources. That includes SARC SI, that includes SARC tutoring, that includes your professor, even if they have TAs, your textbook is a resource, using everything you have. CAPS, yes, using CAPS if that's what you need as well. What else did y'all learn today? Anything else? All right. Next slide, please. Well, thank you all for coming, first of all. I know that this is sometimes a hard topic to talk about, but I hope that you're able to gather something from it. This handout is for you to keep. It has some really good tips on there that I hope you all can use for your exams and such, even quizzes, anything. But if either of you are a first-year student, we do have, are you all familiar with Linklood? Okay, so if you aren't aware, this is the new way that Linklood is being collected and tallied for each person. So if you, basically you can access this through the UCF app, the UCF mobile app, and then through the UCF mobile app, there's your ability to download the Goose Chase app. This is where all of the Linklood points will be stored, and at some point there will be a Linklood raffle that you all can participate in for going to workshops such as these or other events on campus. So there is Linklood offered for the workshop today. So if you all would like to take advantage of that, here are the directions up here. Are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions for me? Yeah.
What is the difference between SARC sessions and SI sessions?
So the SARC tutoring sessions will all happen in the SARC lab, which is first floor of it's in the Student Academic Resource Center, but the first bottom floor of Howard Phillips Hall. They will all happen in there. There's a set specific schedule that's also, both of the schedules are on our website. But for example, if the tutor has on the schedule that they're there Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 2 to 5, you can go in to tutoring to the office, to the lab at any time between 2 and 5, go get some tutoring. You can ask some questions. They'll work through some things with you. They'll help you that way. SI is a little bit different because it's a tad bit more specific. The SI leader will sit in your lecture section for the duration of the semester. So they're basically retaking the class with you. And they'll facilitate 4 weekly study sessions that are 50 minutes long throughout the week on different days, different times, and they'll be around campus. They won't be in that lab. So their schedules are set, but they're just at different times. And when it comes to the SI model, SI leaders aren't necessarily permitted to re-lecture any class material because your lecture is meant for that. You're supposed to go to lecture to learn that stuff. It's more so a review of that, or that's a place where you can learn study strategies to understand the material, and basically have that group atmosphere that you can do group studying with as well. So, good question. Any other questions? All right. I have a form for each of you. It's for your attendance at today's workshop as well as an evaluation of the workshop. So I'll give everyone one. If you could please fill it out for me, that would be great. And thank you all so much for coming.